My name is Clayton Barton. I am the founder of BartonBros Studios and the creator of howtodrawcomics.net. I also do a little bit of sessional lecturing here and there, in person. I guess you could call them live drawing classes, but my main focus primarily is creating learning content for aspiring comic book artists, or really any artist who wants to learn the art of dynamic drawing. What inspires me and drives me to create is, I think it's the things I grew up with as a kid. So things like Dragon Ball Z and Ninja Turtles and Biker Mice and Street Sharks. I watched all these cartoons when I was a kid, and I absolutely love comic books as well. I guess because they were this visual medium. I always hated reading, novels because they didn't have pictures; they only had words. So when I'd go to the library as a kid, I'd try to find every storybook that I could that actually had illustrations in it, because they're just what pulled me in and engaged me the most. And I think really engagement is the key with all forms of art. It's probably one of the reasons I'm also a big movie buff as well. But what inspires me is the characters within those movies, those comic books, and those cartoons, those animations, and the stories that unfold around the characters that are within them. I think just thinking about the idea of being able to create my own and gaining the ability to be able to do that is what keeps me going. Have I always been creative? Heck yes, I have. Ever since I was a kid. It's one of those things that give me energy. They talk about introverts and extroverts, and how introverts, when they go out into a public place, they end up losing energy because they spend so much of their social power communicating with other people, and they run out real fast. Extroverts, on the other hand, they get a lot of energy from being around people. Me, I'm kind of like an introvert, because I get energy from drawing and creating and producing my own stories and stuff. And I think that for me, creativity has just always been a very close thing. It's been part of me, essentially, since I was a kid. From the earliest time that I can remember, I've always been inspired. I was the kind of kid that, I'd be watching Superman, the old Christopher Reeve Superman. I'd get halfway through that movie and I'd want to actually be Superman. I'd want to draw Superman. I remember the first time I saw Terminator, all I was drawing was Terminators for like a week after that. So, I think that it gives me just a lot of energy, and it keeps me going, wakes me up in the morning. Of course, I'm challenged all the time, and that's what keeps me in the game. That's what keeps me creative. That's what I love most about art, is that through the challenges, I'm growing, I'm evolving, I'm harnessing my abilities, and I'm honing my craft. If it wasn't for those challenges, I'd never be able to do that. It's like a good video game, it challenges you along the way. And if it never did, if there was never any, big bosses that you had to beat or bad guys that you had to fight, then it wouldn't be anywhere near as fun. Art is exactly the same way. If it wasn't challenging enough for me, I probably still wouldn't be doing it. In fact, when I do reach a plateau in my abilities, what I'll often find is that if I'm not looking for that next thing to overcome within my gap within my skill set, I tend to lose interest. I just get bored with it. So and I almost take the progress that I have made for granted in a way. So art is one of those things that's always going to keep you on your toes, because your style is always progressing. The kind of things you're drawing, the themes that you're venturing into, is always going to be venturing into new ones. New things are going to be grabbing your interest. So for me, the challenges are what makes art fun. That's why I'm in it still. I have lots of things that I'm proud of. When I was working in video games, I worked on a lot of really fun projects there. Probably the height that I got to was working on one of the HD remakes of the Zelda game, Twilight Princess, I believe it was. But I got out of video games and I went more into art just because I found that more enjoyable. I didn't really like working in game studios that much. Some of them were freaking fantastic. Others were just kind of like the culture there wasn't really doing it for me. So I went more toward art, and teaching was another big one. So most of my career has been all teaching for the last 8 years. And one of the reasons that I'm still teaching is because when I first got into it, as nerve-wracking as it was, as challenging as it was, I absolutely fell in love with it, because here I was able to use my abilities and teach other people how to harness those same abilities at the same time, and they were thankful for it. So yeah, teaching has been one of my greatest passions in life, one of my greatest accomplishments, because of all the students that walk away from it with a new skill set and able to, have the confidence to venture down the path that they're going to take their talents through to. But probably my greatest accomplishment is howtodrawcomics.net, and I hope that it'll become a bigger and bigger accomplishment as time goes on, because I want to grow it. I want to make it the ultimate resource for aspiring comic book artists to harness and hone their abilities. And it's pretty much what I'm in. It's my passion. Okay, so howtodrawcomics.net started because of the idea that I could impact the progress of someone's learning significantly by sharing with them the knowledge and the experience that I had based on my own development. And the reason that it was such an important thing for me to be able to do that, to put the amount of energy and the time into creating this website, into the ultimate library of learning resources for comic book artists, is because when I was learning myself, it was the courses like David Finch's comic book illustration on the Gnome One Workshop and his dynamic drawing series with a body and hands and feet, Stephen Platt's course on comic book illustration on the Gnome One Workshop, Mark Brunet's Cube Brush, and of course various courses on Udemy that I went through. I found that to be such an impact on my own, the amount of time that it took me to learn stuff, because before that I was kind of flying blind. I didn't have any form of guidance. Yeah, I was going to uni and I was doing the courses and the games development and stuff, but that wasn't really teaching me the skill set that I needed to become the comic book artist that I wanted to become. So it was those learning resources that really allowed me to essentially shortcut my learning curve in a dramatic way. I seriously don't think that I'd be at the level that I'm at now without them. So I really wanted to do the same thing for other people, and I knew that I could because of my experience in teaching and just my general curiosity and enjoyment for being able to put together these digital learning resources, edit them, and then upload them for people. And the great thing is that no matter where they were around the world, these students who were looking to learn the craft of comic book illustration were able to have access to it. And that was what, for me, was more powerful than sitting in a classroom, because not only could they go back through it over and over again as many times as they needed to in order to review and recap on the knowledge that was being shared with them, but also, again, they could access it from anywhere in the world. So it was much more accessible to everybody. And that's how howtodrawcomics.net started, and why it's going to keep on growing larger and larger into the future, why more resources are going to be continuously added to it. I'm honestly addicted to making new courses and tutorials for that website. It's going to be awesome to see the epitome of what it can become. Okay, so where am I headed and what are my goals? Well, howtodrawcomics.net is the biggest focus for me at the moment. It's what I'm spending my time on every single day. It's what gets me up in the morning. It's what keeps me up at night. And I'm absolutely in love with the content that I'm bringing out for people through howtodrawcomics.net. So in the future, I'm probably going to wind down on the sessional lecturing in live classes at various campuses and open up more of a mentoring program through howtodrawcomics.net directly. So people will essentially be able to sign up and enroll in that and have me there to kind of guide them through the process based on where they're at individually within their progression as an artist. So that's the big thing that I actually want to do next year. Obviously, it's going to take a little bit of time to figure out how that's all going to happen, how many people I'm going to be able to take on at once, because whoever enrolls in this thing, I really want their art to significantly skyrocket and hopefully get them more toward where they see their art being at, the ideal version of, their style and what they're able to pull off with their abilities. But yeah, howtodrawcomics.net is going to continue growing. I want to increase the tutorial library, I want to increase the video library, and especially the course library, and hopefully even bring out a bit of a book, because I do think although videos are somewhat more engaging because you're actually able to see me or whatever instructor is demonstrating actually execute the drawings and the illustration that they're demonstrating. And that can be a valuable learning experience. I'm telling you, like that's how I develop my abilities so quickly, by watching people like David Finch and Stephen Platt do that. But I think a book is one of those mediums, one of those platforms that can really allow you to learn the more technical aspects of drawing. Because to actually demonstrate that in a video, it's not really ideal. The viewer, the student can't really go through it at a comfortable pace because they're going to have to rewind and go back through it. So videos are really great for being able to see the process unfold and how all of that technical stuff is implemented. Books, I believe, though, that show you step by step the fundamental principles of drawing is really where it's at. So I'm going to hopefully put out a few books once I'm done with the video courses. But yeah, that's what I'm focused on in the near future, and where I'm hoping to go next. So advice to aspiring artists, what I would say is drawing and the height at which you can take it to is essentially like physics, right? Whatever you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. So if you draw 1 hour a day, you're going to progress the same amount of that, the equivalent of that. If you draw for 14 hours every day, then you're going to also progress the equivalent of that. So it really comes down to how much you actually want this, how much you want to gain and harness your abilities and become the comic artist or the artist in any medium or genre that you want to be, whether it's a musician, a writer, a movie creator, an animator, a game developer, whatever it is. The amount to which you progress is going to be equal to the amount of time that you're willing to put in. So make sure that you're practicing every day. If this really means something to you, it's got to be something that you're constantly doing. And I'm not talking about, doing it for 1 day a week for 14 hours. I'm talking about every single day, because you need to have that habit happening. You need to have that constant progression, because otherwise you forget the things you've learned through experience. And you want to be constantly studying. Like I said, the way in which I grew so fast as an artist and made so much progress in a short amount of time was because I was watching other artists who I wanted to be like, whose work that I respected and admired. I wanted to get to where they were at. So I was looking at exactly what they were doing, and I was copying it. I was replicating their artwork and keeping in mind all the concepts that they were teaching. So you want to be constantly doing that, and eventually, slowly but surely, what you're going to find is that you get to a point where you achieve unconscious competence. All those challenges that burdened you in the beginning, all those obstacles you had to surpass, they're not going to be a bother to you anymore. And you're going to work your way up in stages, okay? So when you first start out, there's going to be a certain set of problems you have to face. Things like perspective, proportions, anatomy, composition, that kind of stuff. But as you progress and level up, what you'll find is that you're faced with a new set of problems. Things like storytelling, how the audience emotionally engages with your work, that kind of stuff. So you're always going to be challenged no matter what. You're never, hopefully, going to reach the best that you can be, because, once you get there, then you're not going to progress anymore, right? So, I'd say stay humble. That's another piece of advice that I could give aspiring artists. Stay humble, because it'll keep you learning, it'll keep you on the right path. And just make sure that you're putting the time in. If this really matters to you, then you've got to ask yourself, what am I going to have to do to deserve the skill set that I want to attain? And that's the best piece of advice that I can give you.